Have you ever experienced this kind of suffocating pain? You work all month, get your paycheck, but just a few days later, you look at your account and ask yourself, why am I already broke so fast? It's not that you're reckless. It's not that you lack discipline, and it's definitely not that you're not trying. What hurts most people isn't losing money. It's losing it without knowing why. It's like you're holding a bucket full of holes. You pour into it with your sweat, your time, your long, exhausting days, but the water still leaks drop by drop until there's nothing left for you to keep. I've seen so many people fall into that spiral, smart people, hardworking people, people with good incomes, but they still live in financial stress because of one simple truth. They don't know where their money is going, and you cannot change your financial future if you don't dare to face the reality of today. Success doesn't begin with earning more. It begins the moment you see the true picture of your cash flow. Where's the money going? Where is it leaving you? And how much of it is silently stealing your freedom? In this video, I'm going to share with you the principles that can help you regain control, not just of your cash flow, but of your entire life. From identifying invisible leaks, to the discipline of tracking used by the wealthy, to the 30-day system that can transform your entire financial mindset. And you should stay until the end of the video because the final principle is the key that can shift your life in a way you never expected. Get ready. The journey to reclaiming control of your cash flow and control of your life starts here. Principle 1, know exactly where the money goes. Before you learn how to earn more, there's a truth very few people dare to face. You're not poor because you don't know how to make money. You're poor because you have no idea how much you're losing every single day. I've met many people with very good incomes, engineers, managers, people rising in their careers. They work hard. They have goals. They have potential. But at the end of the month, they look at their account and feel like their money has vanished into thin air. Once, I asked a man I was mentoring, "Can you tell me exactly how much you spent last week?" He looked at me, gave a small laugh, and said, "Jim, I just know it was a lot, but exactly, I'm not sure." And that moment revealed the problem of 90% of people who never get rich. They live by the feeling of money instead of the truth of money. Cash flow in your life is like an underground river. It's not loud. It doesn't alarm you. It just quietly flows in a direction you're not paying attention to, until one day you realize you're standing somewhere far from where you wanted to be. Many people believe as long as I earn more, I'll be fine. But if the bucket is still leaking, no matter how much water you pour in, it will never be full. You can't manage what you can't measure. You can't control your cash flow if you don't know what you're spending on, why you're spending on it, and how much of it is actually helping you move forward. The wealthy don't know how to keep money because they're stingy. They keep money because they see clearly. Every dollar has a purpose, and every decision has a consequence. I remember very clearly the story of a man who was a manager at a large company. His income was better than most people around him, but his financial life was always tight. No surplus, no savings, no progress. I asked him to write down every expense for just 1 week. And when we looked at that notebook together, he stayed silent for a long time. The things he thought were small, when added up, they accounted for nearly 1/3 of his income. He looked at me and said, "Jim, I didn't think it would be that big." I just smiled and said, "You see, the problem was never your income. It was the blindness." My own life taught me the same thing. I used to make a lot, but I didn't see clearly, and that kept me stuck for years. Everything changed only when I started reviewing every dollar I spent. No judgment, no blaming, just seeing clearly. If you want to reach a new land, you need a map. If you want to reach financial freedom, you need your own cash flow map. A map that answers the most important question: where's my money going every day? And when you see it, you'll also start to see the path of your life. And this is only the beginning. Because even if you know where the money goes, there is still a more dangerous enemy draining your wallet every day. Something almost no one notices until it's too late. Principle 2, the blind spending effect. The silent enemy that makes 90% of people lose money. There's a financial enemy most people underestimate because it makes no noise. It doesn't knock on your door. It doesn't startle you. It just quietly slips into your life. and drains the money you work so hard to earn. I call it the blind spending effect. It's dangerous not because you spend a lot, but because you have no idea what you're spending on. You don't see it. You don't control it. And when you don't control it, it will control you. Most people remember their big expenses. They know how much their rent, car payment, tuition costs. But when I ask, what about the small ones? The things you buy out of convenience, emotion, or just this once? Do you remember those? Usually, they shake their heads. Then they say the familiar line, Jim, those are tiny. But you know, it's the small things that quietly create the biggest leaks. Like a water tank with 100 tiny holes. Not one hole is big enough to scare you, but all of them together are enough to make your tank never full. And that's exactly what blind spending does to your financial life. It doesn't knock you down in a day, it drains you silently. I remember working with a young man once, someone with a decent income. He believed he spent very reasonably. He said, Jim, I don't spend much. I only spend on what's necessary. I asked him to do one simple thing, track every expense for 10 days. Just 10 days. On the 10th day, he brought me a small notebook. We sat down and flipped through the pages, and as the numbers started to appear, his eyes gradually changed. $7 here, $12 there. One expense to feel better. One expense to make things a bit more comfortable. One expense just this time. Each small, very small, but added together they equaled an entire week of his salary. He looked at me, confused and almost in disbelief. And I told him one sentence. Not knowing doesn't mean not paying the price. We all pay a price. The question is, do you pay it with awareness or in blindness? Blind spending is like a silent thief living in your home. It doesn't take a lot at once. It just takes a little every day. But then one day you look back and suddenly realize your house has been emptied. I also paid the price for that blindness. I made a lot, but I didn't know what I spent on. I couldn't control my money. And because of that, money controlled me. Only when I had the courage to face the real picture did my financial life begin to change. And you can change too. But to do that, you need one thing above all, the discipline to track every dollar, just like the wealthy have done for years. Because when you see clearly, you begin to live differently. Principle 3, tracking discipline, the habit all rich people follow. There's one thing I realized very early in my life. Successful people aren't the ones who earn the most. They're the ones who see the clearest. They don't guess. They don't hope. They don't say, I think, or probably. They know. They track. They measure. And because of that, they control everything that's happening in their financial life. I remember a wealthy businessman I once spent time talking with. He wasn't flashy, not the type who liked to talk about money. But there was one habit he had maintained for over 20 years. Writing down every single expense, even the smallest ones. I asked him, why have you done that for so long? You're already rich. He smiled and said, Jim, it's because I track that I became rich. And if I stop tracking, I will gradually lose what made me rich. That sentence stayed in my mind for a very long time. It made me realize this. Cash flow is not something you can understand by feeling. It's something you can only control through the discipline of tracking. When you start writing down every expense, the first thing you gain is not data, it's awareness. You begin to notice expenses you never paid attention to before. You start to see habits you once thought were normal. And you see clearly what things are quietly taking away 10%, 20%, even 30% of your income. I still remember the first time I applied this habit to myself. In the first few days, I didn't feel any difference. But by the end of the week, when I looked back at my notebook, I suddenly went quiet. There were expenses I didn't even remember making. There were expenses I thought were just small stuff. There were expenses I made just because I was sad, tired, or wanted to feel a little better. And then I understood. I wasn't poor because I couldn't make money. I was poor because I couldn't see. From then on, I started tracking consistently every day, not to control myself excessively, but to clearly know what I was doing. When you know clearly, you can change. When you're in the dark, all you can do is hope. The rich understand this. They don't let their financial life drift according to their mood. They walk into every month with a clear sense of control. They know where their money comes from, why it leaves, and they decide what deserves to stay. Tracking cash flow is not an act of stinginess. It's an act of respect. Respect for the time you spend earning money, respect for the effort you put in every day, and respect for the future you're trying to build. And something interesting happens when you start tracking consistently. You suddenly find yourself becoming more aware, more grounded, more intentional. Spending decisions you used to make based on emotion will now be made with clarity. Someone once told me, "Jim, tracking expenses doesn't change anything." I answered, "It doesn't change today, but it changes who you are. And when you change, everything else changes with you." And that is the true power of tracking discipline. It doesn't just help you see where the money goes, it helps you see where you're going. And once you've built this habit, you'll be ready to step into a higher level where you don't just see the expenses, but you see the nature of each expense, a journey very few people ever make, but those who do change their lives forever. Principle 4, 4 types of money the poor never track. When you start tracking your expenses, you'll discover something interesting. The money that makes you poorer is not the big amounts, but the ones you'd never think to write down. I call them the 4 invisible types of money. They slip into your financial life like light breezes, not strong enough for you to notice, but strong enough to blow your life off course. Once, I met a woman who always complained, "Jim, I don't understand why I never have any money left." Her income wasn't bad. She worked hard. She wasn't wasteful. But at the end of the month, she still had no idea where her money went. I told her to try tracking for a week. And when we sat down together to look over her notebook, her eyes were full of surprise. Not because of the big expenses, but because of the small ones she thought weren't worth writing down. And that's exactly why 90% of people never move forward. There are types of money the rich always pay attention to, but the poor ignore. Not because they don't care, but because they don't see how serious they are. The first type is convenience money, the expenses you make just because it's convenient. A cup of coffee, a quick stop by a store because I was passing by, a small item because it looks cheap. These kinds of expenses usually don't leave a mark in your memory, but they leave a trail in your bank account. The second type is emotional money, the expenses you make when you're sad, tired, or feel like you deserve a treat. People are most likely to spend not when they're rich, but when they're emotionally weak. And if you don't realize that, you will pay for it with your future. The third type is, seems cheap but is very expensive. Money. You buy because you think, oh, it's just a few bucks. But those few bucks, repeated enough times, turn into a number you won't believe. It's like leaving a door not fully closed. You think just a little wind will slip in, but that wind can make the whole house cold. And the last type is long-term commitment money, the expenses you agree to pay monthly or yearly but no longer use. Subscriptions you've forgotten, habits that no longer fit your life, things you keep paying for just because you're used to paying for them. It's like a thin string tied around your ankle. You don't feel it, but it holds you back every day. When that woman saw these 4 invisible types of money, she suddenly understood why she worked so hard but made so little progress. She said in shock, "Jim, I'm losing 30% of my income just because of things like this?" I nodded. That's right. And that's why the poor think they don't spend much, but still never get rich. It's not because they don't earn enough. It's because they don't clearly see what they're losing. When you start writing down these 4 types of expenses, something powerful happens. You don't just see where the money goes, you see yourself. You see your emotions, your habits, your autopilot decisions, and the things you've been ignoring. And from the moment you see clearly, you can't live the same way anymore. You'll change how you spend, and your life will change with it. The important thing is this: you can't fix a leak if you don't know where it is. And you can't escape financial pressure if these invisible expenses are still silently stealing your freedom. And this is why we need the next principle. A simple principle with the power to completely transform your cash flow. Fixing leaks before thinking about building more assets. Principle 5, you can't build more assets when the storage is leaking. There's something I always tell the people I've mentored. You can't build more storage if your current storage is leaking. It doesn't matter how hard you work. It doesn't matter how fast your income grows. If you don't fix the leaks, all your efforts to get rich will be like pouring water into a broken tank. Imagine you own a storage house full of grain. You load it with sack after sack of crops, every result of an entire harvest season. But at the bottom corner, there's a small hole you never notice. No one hears the sound of leaking. No one sees the grains falling out. It quietly, slowly, but steadily takes away your effort every single day, until the day you open the storage and are shocked to see how little you have left. Not because you didn't work hard enough, but because you let that leak exist for too long. It's the same with finances. Many people try to earn more. They work overtime. They take side jobs. They look for new projects, new opportunities, but their life still doesn't improve because the money they earn slips away through invisible leaks they've never addressed. I once met a man who always complained that he couldn't save. He wanted to invest, to build savings, to buy a house, but every month he struggled. When I asked if he had ever reviewed his recurring monthly expenses, he sighed and said, "Jim, I don't think there's that much there." But when we sat down and I asked him to list every small recurring expense, phone, subscriptions, services, the things he kept just for convenience, he suddenly went silent. He looked at the total and his eyes widened. The expenses he thought were insignificant amounted to nearly 25% of his income. I said, "See, this is the leak in your storage, and if you don't patch it up, no matter how much grain you pour in, the storage will still feel empty." What makes many people poorer is not a lack of money, but the fact that they don't pause long enough to see how much they're losing. They build more before they repair. They speed up before checking the brakes. They push their income higher while their financial foundation is still cracked. There's something the rich always do before they invest, expand, or build more income streams. They check their storage. They make sure everything is safely kept. No leaks, no losses, no dark corners in their cash flow. And when the foundation is solid, everything they build on top can grow sustainably. You know what the best part is? Patching leaks always brings results faster than earning more money. Just by closing a few small gaps, you'll naturally feel more financially relaxed. You'll see your cash flow become more orderly. You'll start having savings. And that's when your financial life enters a new phase. I once said something that many people never forgot. No one becomes poor from a lack of money as much as they become poor from letting money leak away. A small leak, if left long enough, is more dangerous than a big one-time expense. And you need to remember this. You don't need to earn more right away. Start by keeping what you already have. When you can do that, every effort that follows, earning, investing, building assets, becomes many times more effective. And this is the foundation for moving to the next principle. A special story about a woman who lost 30% of her income because of 7 small habits, and how she reversed her entire financial life in just 6 months. Principle 6, the transformation story. The woman who lost 30% of her income because of small habits. I want to tell you a story that left me with a lot of reflection. A story about a woman who, on the outside, everyone thought was doing fine. She had a stable job, a good income, and she always looked neat and put together. But behind all of that was a big question she had never shared with anyone. Why she worked so hard, yet never had any money left. When she came to me, she spoke in a tired voice. "Jim, I don't understand what's happening. I don't shop extravagantly. I don't make big purchases, but every month I have nothing left." I looked at her and I knew right away the problem wasn't her income. It was the things she couldn't see. I suggested she do something that sounded simple. Write down every expense for 30 days. That's it. She hesitated a bit at first, but eventually agreed. On the first day, everything seemed normal. On the second day, still nothing unusual, but by the second week, she started to notice things she had never paid attention to before. A milk tea she bought when she felt sad, a for convenience expense when she stopped by a store, an item that didn't cost much that she bought just because it was on sale, a subscription she had forgotten she was still paying for every month. Those things were very small, so small that she thought, do I really have to write this down too? But she still wrote them down. She kept the promise she made to herself. And then the 30th day came. We sat down together, opened the notebook, and went through each expense. As the numbers started to show up, her face gradually changed, from surprised to disbelief, then silence. In total, the expenses she thought were small, the ones she had considered insignificant, accounted for nearly 30% of her income. 30%. Not because she was reckless, not because she was irresponsible, but because she simply didn't see what was quietly draining her wallet. She sat still for a long time, then softly said, "Jim, now I understand. It's not that I don't make money. It's that I let it slip away too easily." I told her in a gentle but very clear voice, "That's right. When you don't know where your money is going, you will always feel like you don't have enough. But when you see everything clearly, that's when you truly begin to have choices." And then something wonderful happened. In the next 6 months, she started changing those small habits little by little. She canceled subscriptions she didn't use. She stopped emotional spending. She became aware of her for convenience expenses. She learned to ask herself one question before every purchase. Does this expense bring me closer to the future I want, or pull me further away from it? And after just half a year, her cash flow completely reversed. She didn't just save more, she had money to invest and prepare for bigger goals in her life. She came to see me again and said, "Jim, I never thought just knowing the small things could change my life this much." I smiled and said, "Small changes always create big transformations. And the most important thing isn't the money you keep, it's the person you become in the process." The truth is, you cannot control your financial future if you cannot control your small habits, because it's the small things that determine the big life. And once you see that, you're ready to step into a simple but powerful system that can help anyone at any stage of life fully regain control of their cash flow. Principle 7, the 30-day cash flow review system, and the 3 small changes principle. After that woman clearly saw the expenses that made her lose 30% of her income, I told her something I also want to say to you today. Seeing it once is not enough. You have to keep shining a light on it long enough to change it. Because the truth is, one round of note-taking doesn't create transformation. 1 week of tracking doesn't change habits. But 30 days of looking straight at the truth can change your entire life. I call it the 30-day cash flow review system. A system so simple that many people dismiss it, but also so powerful that those who stick with it become people with more financial freedom than most of society. I told that woman, for the next 30 days, write down every expense, big or small, whether you think it matters or not, whether you feel embarrassed about it or not. She asked me, "Jim, do I have to write down even the insignificant expenses?" I said, "It's exactly the insignificant things that create the life you don't want." And so she began. On the first day, she wrote down a few expenses. On the second day, a few more. But by the 6th day, she started to see something I call the true financial mirror. Each page reflected a part of her habits, the unconscious choices, the emotions that led to spending, the weaknesses she once thought didn't matter. When you write things down for 30 straight days, you don't just see the numbers. You see yourself. You see what drives you, what makes you weak, what makes you spend unnecessarily, and what shows your growth. On the 30th day, she brought the notebook to me. Unlike the last time when she discovered she was losing 30% of her income, this time, her face was brighter, more awake, more grounded. She said, "Jim, I understand now. I can't change my financial life if I don't change myself." And that's when I told her the most important part of this principle. You don't need to change 10 things, you just need to change 3 small things. I call it the 3 small changes principle. Because when you have a 30-day picture, you'll see a lot of gaps. But if you try to fix everything at once, you'll quit. So I told her, choose exactly 3 things you can change immediately. Not the 3 biggest ones, but the 3 easiest ones. Because easy change creates momentum. And momentum creates transformation. She chose 3 things. Stop emotional spending when tired. Cancel 2 services she no longer used. Reduce convenience purchases by preparing in advance. And just those 3 small changes helped her save nearly 15% of her income in the very first month. Not by earning more, but by stopping the losses she never noticed. In the 2nd month, she saved 20%. In the 3rd month, she started investing. In the 4th month, she created an emergency fund she once believed was impossible. And by the 6th month, she looked at me and said, "Jim, I feel like I'm living a different life." And I replied, "Not a different life, just a new you in the same life." Because when you clearly see your cash flow over 30 days and you change 3 small things each month, you don't just clean up your money flow, you strengthen your mindset. And when your mindset is stronger, every financial decision you make afterward becomes wiser. The most wonderful part of this system isn't the amount of money you save, it's the feeling of having control again. The feeling that you're no longer dragged around by your emotions. The feeling that you're steering your own ship instead of being carried by the current. I once said, you can't build wealth with money you don't control. And this 30-day system, along with the 3 small changes, is how you take back that control. And once you've done this, you're ready to step into the most important part of the video, tying it all together and turning these principles into a completely new financial life. When you look back at the entire journey today, I hope you recognize something important. Financial freedom doesn't come from the number in your bank account, but from how well you understand and control your own cash flow. You've seen why so many people work their whole lives and never get ahead. You've understood that confusion is what keeps them poor, not their income. You've seen the invisible leaks most people ignore. And you've heard the stories of people who, just by seeing a little more clearly, were able to change their entire lives. These 7 principles today are not just about money. They're about awareness, about choice, about no longer living on autopilot, but living with intention. Because every dollar you spend tells a story. Every small habit builds a direction. And every financial decision, no matter how small, brings you closer to or further from the future you want. You don't need to change your whole life in a day. Just start with the first step. Know exactly where your money is going. When you can do that, everything else will start to fall into place. If these lessons resonate with you, if you feel you've seen something important for your own journey, hit like, subscribe, and share this video with those who need it. Not so I can have more viewers, but so more people can have the chance to change their lives. And I want to ask you one question before we wrap up. After this video, what is the first thing you will change in your cash flow? Leave a comment, because sometimes just writing it down is already a big step forward. I'll end with words I said many years ago. You and I both have a gift. That gift is today. Use it wisely. Thank you for staying until the end of the video. I truly appreciate that. See you in the next lessons on Jim Rohn Treasures.